Call the city council meeting to order Tuesday, September 27th. Stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
God, our divine spirit, we ask you to shine your light down upon our little city, blessing it, the workers, the residents, our council, all the employees. We ask that you guide us in the right direction so that our city flourishes. For this we are thankful. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Ms. Shutt.
Yes, sir. Mayor Dale Massad.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Terrence Rowe.
Here.
Councilwoman Nancy Britton.
Here.
Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell. Here. Please let the record show that Councilman William Dittmer is absent. City Attorney Jim Matthew.
Here.
And City Manager Vince Lupo.
Here.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any announcements from staff? Comments from the general public? Thomas Brown. Last time till the Board of Planning and Zoning.
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court, about planning and zoning. The City of Port Richey government, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, the Code Compliance Department, and the City Manager all take part in writing and/or enforcing ordinances. Some ordinances apply only to natural bodies of water, while other ordinances apply only to canals and other not naturally formed body of water. I cannot ask the city officials to enforce the ordinance that apply to Lake Cox because the city will not inform me as to whether it is or is not a natural body of water. If it is not a natural body of water, city residents, city ordinance allow a resident to obstruct the view of the lake with a 6-foot-tall solid fence that you cannot see through. If it is a natural body of water, you cannot obstruct the view with a non-see-through 6-foot-tall solid fence. In order to enforce the proper ordinances, the city must label Lake Cox as naturally formed or not naturally formed. I have provided a lot of facts that prove that Lake Cox naturally formed. There have been no facts presented by anyone that Lake Cox did not naturally form. At the October 11th meeting, when it comes to old business, I would like to hear from anyone that has proof that Lake Cox did not naturally form. If no one speaks up, I would like to hear a city official declare that, based on all information that we have, Lake Cox formed naturally and is not a dug lake. Until then, the residents of the city do not know which ordinances apply to the lake. Please research, discuss, and settle this issue. Thank you.
Jocelyn, is planning and zoning meeting, or can we ask them to meet?
We met already about the fence issue. Is that what you're?
Yes.
They did meet a while back. I don't remember exactly when, but they have met.
Did they give, as Sean had said, they were going to give some sort of thoughts toward the body of water, whether it be natural or not?
I know they did make a number of recommendations.
They did make recommendations. I attended the meeting. They made the recommendations that the code was changed to have the city manager have the final say on those instances. But they were sticking with what the city attorney had originally given his opinion on. They were just changing the ordinance so that it would not be in the city manager's final say. It would have to come before council.
Okay, can we agenda that and get it over with?
And we can certainly provide you with the minutes from that meeting, so you can understand the discussion that the Planning and Zoning Board had about the fence ordinance.
Okay. And their recommendations.
Exactly. That'll be in the minutes.
So the agenda that for next time. We will say blessings over this next meeting.
The March 30th meeting, Sean admitted there were contradictory ordinances.
Okay, we'll discuss that at the next meeting. I have Mr. Solheim.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, board members. My name is David Solheim. I live at 5538 Quist Drive. I'm here in reference to noise and something else. Can't remember. A few weeks back, 12:20 a.m., I was awakened by sound like an explosion. It was in fact 4 motorcycles out in front of my house. They were revving up their engines full blast. This is at 12:20 in the morning, and shouting obscenities over the noise at each other and laughing. My first thought I had was the children that are living on that street. I just also woke up the same way I did. Scared the heck out of me. A week later in the afternoon, there was a motorcycle running an engine at full throttle again, but not going anywhere. I looked out, the same person who lives across the street from me, and the tenant, house over, was running his motorcycle in his driveway, but had the brakes on, so only the rear wheel was spinning, and smoke was pouring out of this. I said, what in the heck is going on? I went back into my house. That was when the smoke started pouring into my house. Burnt rubber, burnt asphalt. On the 4th of July, the same people from this house, in spite of all the noise they had been making, told the mothers of 2 girls living across the street from them who were shooting off little firecrackers, you know, the size of your finger, went over there, told them to stop that noise or someone's going to the hospital. So this is the people I'm telling you that I'm talking about, so you get a little impression. What can we do about this? The police cannot be expected to be everywhere. By the time they are called and respond, those who flaunt the law have already sped away. Can we take the law in our own hands? No, we cannot expect you board members to be out patrolling. So what can we do? I heard the term renaissance of Port Richey mentioned during the last election. I'm in favor of that. We voted in a new mayor, 2 new board members, and I'm sure that they all board members would like to be remembered as the board that got Port Richey Renaissance movement on its feet. And what would it take? I would have to say it would have to be something that would catch attention. Where would we start? At the beginning, prepare the groundwork for future improvements. Eliminate the signs that the city does not care. The noise, the illegal parking, the broken things not fixed. And then the rest of this is just in bullets because I didn't know how to put it in sentences. 1 bullet, noise. Why do we accept this? We don't hear automobiles blasting out of their exhaust, but we have to put up with motorcycles emitting deafening noises from blocks away. You have the power to stop this. Police officer noise, stop this. I have a police officer noise test. How would they know if it was too loud? If I can hear it, it's too loud for our community, and that should be sufficient. Put up signs at the city entrances, as you see on there. Noise is in effect, enforcement. 0 tolerance. Officers' enforcement activity recorded on a checkoff after duty, that will affect his or her efficiency grade, have a no tolerance policy.
Mr. Stoll, I'm sorry, you're out of
Am
time.
I out? Oh, okay.
But maybe Officer Lush would like to.
No,
just-
may I, Mayor?
No, please.
You have none, right?
Sir?
You have all of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Solheim, I listened very carefully to everything you've said, and many of those issues are going to be addressed very quickly in this community. We have a police force who will enforce our ordinances. We have ordinances on the book to provide you the redress that is yours and that should be easily delivered to you. With respect to some of the other issues, they're already under advisement. I'll be more than happy to give you my phone number afterwards. We can discuss this, and I can explain to you some of the direction that the city is moving that you have clearly outlined. But with respect to the immediate issue, I would request that you pick up the phone and call our police force they will enforce our laws.
Okay, may I respond?
Yes,
Oh,
please.
that's why I'm here tonight. I have called the police, and they have responded, and I'm not complaining about the police, but I think they need a program with the full force of the board behind it to support them if we're gonna have a new policy of no tolerance. Because I've called, and they talk to the people, and in no way of criticism, because there's confusing information getting to them, but absolutely, my experience is nothing is done. That's why I'm here to inform you that this is going on in our community. And this whole block that I live on, they're incensed.
Mr.
I don't know the
Solheim,
police
Mr.
report.
Solheim, I can assure you that those issues you've discussed will be taken care of.
Well, I hope so, because I do not intend to
You'll
rest.
hold me to my word, sir.
I will, thank you.
What was your address?
It's 5538 West UISD Drive.
Are you close to Mr. Lee?
Am I close to what?
Frank Lee, is he,
Frank Lee?
yeah, does he live on your street?
I don't know.
Oh, he's on Berlin? Okay, next one over. Okay, I just
Thank
wanted to know.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I am pretty much restricted to my house. I'm not allowed to go out because of, I now have PTSD because of the attacks of dogs in this community. So I never, ever go out. And seeing you, I love at least being here to hear voices again. And then when I go shopping, I hear. And so it's, I don't know many people.
I'll encourage you to continue, the police respond very quickly, so continue to call them. Mr. Lupo will hold him to that.
Yes, and Mr. Cox showed up today, and he knows what's going on. He's a good officer.
We'll look into it. We'll look into it.
Thank you.
And Miss Spalding, Reverend.
Sandra Spalding, 8207 Old Post Road. I want to make a couple of comments, if I may. I have to say that our city took care of the debris from the flood beautifully. I'm proud of all the workers and city manager and council. And I know the office workers were bugged a little bit too. But you know, they picked up everything, the debris was taken care of. And I really think that something should be sent out for a change on how good the city responded and how well it did. So I want that on record. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the general public? Bring it to the council. Ms. Britton?
Nothing.
Anything? Okay, I'll make this quick. I have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I don't think we need to go to the public. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously, Ms. Shuck. Number 2, we have Mr. Schatzel here. Thank you. Is this-
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to thank the council for giving me the opportunity to make a presentation to you. I'm Peter Schatzel with the firm of Wells Hauser and Schatzel, and I'm the city's financial consultant, if you will. I'm here tonight to make a presentation of your financial report for the first 9 months of the fiscal year 16. And I believe that you have a copy of that in front of you. And I'm pleased to report that through the first 9 months of the fiscal year that the city is showing favorable trends in regards to the fact that the amount of expenses are basically less than what has been budgeted, and I'll give you some of those details. The first page of my report has to do with the general fund, and what I would like to highlight to you is that taking your budget for the full year for the revenues, which was $4,064,000, and then for the first 9 months, that would represent 75% of your budget. So for the first 9 months, the amount of budgeted revenues which is in that budget 9-month column, would total $3,048,000. Through the end of June, the amount of the actual revenues total $3,527,000, which is a $478,000 excess of the amount that had been received as compared to the amount that was budgeted. One of the, and I know that you've heard me mention this a number of times now, but in this presentation, what I do to give you what I feel is a better presentation on the revenues is that on the very far right-hand side of that page for the general fund, as you know, the city receives all of its ad valorem taxes like in the first 4 months. I'm done.
Doesn't pertain.
I need to talk faster. But the amount of those ad valorem taxes really have to be used, basically to help pay expenses for the full 12 months, the full calendar year. So what I do in my presentation is I take the ad valorem taxes, but in that far right-hand column, I'm showing a proration where I'm only showing 75% of the ad valorem tax revenues rather than all that has been received. So for example, for the first 9 months, you received $1,395,000 of ad valorem taxes. But if you look at that's for a 12-month period, how much would be allocated to a 9-month period? In that far right-hand column, that amount equates to $1,023,000. To basically summarize that on that prorated column, the amount of revenues would for the first 9 months would total comes to a total of $3,180,000. Even using that 9-month proration, that $3,180,000 is still about $130,000 more than what you had budgeted for the first 9 months. So you definitely have a favorable, a favorable outcome there. Going to the total expenditures, the total budget for the year for the expenditures is $4,764,000. Taking 75% of that for the first 9 months, the budgeted expenditures would be $3,573,000. Your actual expenditures for the first 9 months in the general fund total $3,217,000. So your expenditures are $355,384 below what you had budgeted for that first 9-month period. If you go to that 9-month prorated column on the far right-hand side, the expenditures would then total $3,134,000. Looking at the actual results without any proration, the amount of revenues exceeded the amount of expenditures by a total of $309,651 for the first 9 months. Going to that prorated column, where we are showing, really just 75% of ad valorem revenues, there's still an excess of revenues over expenditures totaling just slightly over $46,000. To give you just a comparison, when I made my last presentation to you for the first 6 months of the year, looking at that proration or that prorated column, at the end of 6 months there was a slight deficit. There was a total of $36,600. So from the end of March through the end of June, there have been, again, there has been a favorable trend. You're now showing an excess of $46,000 as opposed to a deficit of $36,000. On the bottom right-hand corner of that first page, I also give you just a brief summary of the red light camera income and expenses. And the total red light revenues were $768,480. If you look at what had been budgeted, moving up to the top, on the top portion, you budgeted for the year $663,600. For the first 9 months, that would have been, $497,000, and the actual amount that you've collected is $768,000. So you're about $271,000 over budget on the red light camera revenues. Going again back down to that recap at the bottom of the page, after taking out the service fees and the state of Florida fees, the net income, so to speak, from the red light cameras totals $263,230. Moving to the next page, and I'll speed it up because I really wanted to concentrate on the general fund. And as I mentioned to you in prior presentations, if you have any questions for me, please please go ahead and ask them as I'm going along. I don't mind that at all.
Mr. Schatz, how about I give you a
We gotta
breather?
pick on you a little bit.
I'm sorry.
We have to pick on you a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to pick on you in the general fund. How you doing, Pete? For purposes of enlightening the public as well as council and certain representations I made to the council when I presented the budget, for comparison's sake, okay? And I appreciate this work, and I can't explain to the council how great it is to get this every 90 days. So looking at the bottom here of the front page, the city budgeted a deficit in the general fund of $699,135,000. Let's call that $700,000, using the fund balance carryover. Now, that's a different way of saying that if we have a balanced budget, we took $700,000 and pledged it from unrestricted reserves to balance the budget, right?
That's correct.
So that all council members understand, we took, in layman's terms, okay, I'm the translator here, we took $700,000 of unrestricted reserves to balance the budget. We must have a balanced budget. What Mr. Schatzel does here is he gives us the real numbers, taking that out, because there were certain reasons for doing that. One was the fact that red light cameras were, there was problems there. They were doing 19, so we didn't know how much money we were bringing in. All kinds of reasons it was done the year before. But just so you know where we stand now from 90 days previously, what he's explaining to you in the bottom right-hand corner right here with this $46,000, what he's telling you is we're 75% of the way through the year, all things being equal, things not being seasonal, okay, since most of our things are not. His projection, his best projection, doesn't mean it's going to happen, is that at the end of the fiscal year, 90 days from when this report is done, you'll be $46,000 to the black. But really, that's $746,000 to the black. 90 days ago, the projection was $58,000 to the red, which would be about $650 to the good. Now, when I presented the budget, that $650, I told you that in the conservative side, my planning was that it would be $550. Remember I told you that? Because I drew down $362, and there'd be a moment in time when our unrestricted reserves, which are about $1.2 million, which is a good number, will slightly go down after the end of the year until such time as the auditors are here to catch up on the carryover funds, just so you can see it. But bottom line is, I gave you a figure that was conservative, probably, under these numbers, about $200,000, okay? So we're doing very well, and we're heading in the right direction. So I guess that's a layman's way of trying to explain it. Did I get that wrong, Mr. Schatzel?
No, you've got it right.
Okay, that's the only way I can explain it. If you have any questions, you can call me tomorrow or whatever. But it's complicated. Having this makes it's so much easier to see where you stand on a day-to-day basis. Oh, and lastly, I brought out last time, just for council's benefit, in the bottom right-hand corner, you see the red light camera recap. Now, there's a lawsuit working its way through the courts that I'm watching all the time. You'll see right here in the bottom right-hand corner, front page.
Got it.
Okay, just so you see this, you see revenue to date? Now it's $768,480. So if there weren't you know, for 9 months of the year, if there weren't any red light cameras anymore, would you be out, would the city be out 700, you know, $750,000? The answer is no, because you'd also get rid of the next two numbers. The service fees of $160,000 and the state of Florida fees $344,000. So if there were no red light cameras for the first 9 months of this year, the city would be negative $250,000, $263,000. So I'm just trying to keep that in perspective, so when you read in the paper, oh my God, we're gonna be out $1 million. No, we're gonna be out 1/3 of that figure. Okay, so everybody's always saying, oh, we're bringing in $768,000, what if we lose that? You would lose $263,000, because the associated expenditures with that revenue would go away also.
But are these associated expenditures, if were the red light cameras to be declared illegal, would we still, by our contract, not the one that you wrote originally, be liable to the company?
You know, it's a good question, Mayor. I don't know what our requirements would be. First of all, I could tell you this, you know, whether we'd still have to pay them, I could assure you the state of Florida fees would go away, because that's their portion of it, okay? So with regard to the service fees of $160,000, I don't know if we have a contract that we'd have to pay. But those service fees, if it went away, I don't know. Get the answer to that by checking the contract. Do you know, Mr. Lupo, off the top of your head?
Yes, but I think that perhaps I'll allow you to do a little quick analysis.
Sure.
Rather than push forward with this, with a
Yeah,
response.
but
to the
if you
public.
want to know what the exposure is, Mayor, I can check that in our contract.
I think so, because I don't believe that it was rewritten as you had originally written it.
No, they changed the contract since then, which I put in that if they changed the law, we wouldn't pay, but then we have a different service provider now. Well, a different contract, it's still ATS. Do you want to know if we have any exposure if it
Why,
goes
yeah,
away?
while you're at it, see if
Yeah,
you
but
think
that-
we would be liable.
If I might, Mayor, that'll be part and parcel of next year's, absolutely part and parcel of next year's budgeting process and next year's budget. We'll have a better determination at that point in time. But what you also are looking at is an extremely well manicured and extremely well prepared budget. And the interim city manager, Mr. Matthew, and the assistant city manager, and our finance people who worked on, and our department heads who worked on this, did an excellent job of preparing a budget. It's a meaningful budget, and it's placed us in a rather reasonable position, as Mr. Sachel is speaking to. Sir?
That's
So-
correct.
Yeah, that's that's the only comments I have.
Yeah, if I understand it right, we signed a 5-year contract. I may be incorrect, I hope I'm incorrect, but you'll give us an update.
Well, I'll check it out.
Okay.
You'll pull it, I'll look at it. Is that what everybody wants? Everybody good with that, council?
Yes.
I just wanted the exposure period. Sure.
Okay. You know, maybe I'll back up for just a moment, going back to the general fund, and if I'm getting too long-winded, please tell me. But you know, I mentioned that the expenditures were $355,000 under budget, and just to highlight some of some of the larger departments, looking at the budgeted amount, and I'm back on the first page again, Mayor, for the general fund. But under expenditures, like for example, for the police department, for the first 9 months, the budget would be $1,169,000. The amount of the actual expenditures to date total $960,512. So there's a $209,000 favorable variance, where they have spent, they have spent less than what had been budgeted. You're looking at fire. The fire department budget for the first 9 months would be $403,000, and what the amount spent to date is $373,000. So there's a favorable variance there of $30,000. As far as information technology, there's a $41,000 favorable variance. for the Public Works Department, there was a total favorable variance of about $53,000. So you can see that you are saving money across the board, pretty much in all of your major departments.
I think that's called Titan Belt Syndrome.
Right. I'll go on to the second page now for the CRA fund. The budget for the CRA fund that was adopted, the full year budget, you budgeted a deficit of $337,000. So for the first 9 months, you would expect a deficit of about $253,000. In looking at the actual results, the total revenues in the CRA fund to date are almost $781,000, and the amount of the expenditures to date are $586,000. So there's an excess of revenues over expenditures of about almost $195,000. Just as I do with the general fund, in looking at the ad valorem, the amount of tax revenues, in the far right-hand column, I also do that same proration. So rather than looking at all of the ad valorem revenues coming in, I'm just considering 75% for the first 9 months. And when I do that presentation, the amount of revenues would equate to about $581,000 in the CRA fund, and the expenditures of $586,000. So you would have a deficit of about $4,000. Going back to when I gave you the report for the first 6 months, at that time, using that same approach of looking at the proration, you were showing a deficit of in the CRA fund of about $20,000. So that's been cut from $20,000 down to about $4,500. As you know, in regards to the CRA expenditures, you do have a certain amount of discretion on some of those line items, so you do have a little bit more control over some of your spending in the CRA fund as opposed to the general fund. So things could change between now and September if you were to start spending money on projects that you had budgeted. And looking on the bottom of that second page, there's somewhat of a presentation for the Penny for Pasco fund, and in the Penny for Pasco fund, you had budgeted a deficit of $75,668. Through the first 9 months, the total revenue in the Penny for Pasco fund was $291,000, and you've spent $113,000. So there's an excess of revenues over expenditures of almost $178,000 in that Penny for Pasco fund. On page 3 is a condensed financial statement for the water and sewer fund. And I'm pleased to report that, again, you are showing an excess of revenues over expenditures. In the water and sewer fund, you had a balanced budget, so you anticipated for all the revenues that you were expecting, which was about $3.4 million. It was your intent to spend that $3.4 million. For the first 9 months, the amount of budgeted revenues would be approximately $2,552,000, and the amount of actual revenues totaled $2,460,000. So the amount of revenues were about $92,000 less than what you had budgeted. But where you have made up for that is that going down to the expenses, the budget for the first 9 months would be $2,552,000, same as the revenues. But the amounts that you have actually expended total $2,112,000. So you have a $348,000 surplus of the amount of revenues over expenditures. When going back to, for the first 6 months, when I made my presentation, you had income of about $193,000. So there's been a very favorable increase in the net income for the water and sewer fund. You're up to $348,000, which is a very good thing.
Sure is.
That is where we're shooting.
And the last fund that I highlight has to do with the stormwater utility fund, and you are running at a slight deficit in the stormwater utility fund of about $24,500. The amount of revenues that you budgeted are pretty much right on the money for the first 9 months. You would expect, you budgeted $90,000, and the amount of actual revenues totaled, the actual revenues came out to $90,700. So your budget was pretty much right on. The amount of expenses in the stormwater fund for the first 9 months, the budget would be $128,000, and you've expended $115,000. So if you want to look at it another way, even though you're running at a $24,000 deficit in the stormwater utility fund, for the entire year you budgeted a deficit of about $51,000. So if you were 9 months through the year, you would be like somewhere like around about $35,000 or so, and your deficit is only $24,000. So again, I would say that there is that is a favorable variance from what you had budgeted. The last page of the report is a summary of your cash balances. I apologize, I haven't been speaking into the microphone very well here. The total cash balances as of June 30th, 2016 totaled $4,954,000. Of that $4,954,000, there are amounts that are restricted as to how they can be expended, and those total restrictions amount to the amount restricted is about $1.5 million. So your unrestricted cash, which can be used for operations, is the $4.9 million plus the amount restricted of about $1.5 million. So that unrestricted cash totals $3,448,000. One of the things that I wanted to comment to you is that in prior presentations, I've mentioned that you have accumulated a fair amount of cash in regards to your transportation impact fees, and you really had not been spending those down. But in this current fiscal year 2016, you have expended almost $155,000 of your transportation impact fees, which again is a good thing. And those monies need to be expended in regards to transportation improvements. So I just wanted to mention that to you. That's really the end of the presentation I had planned for you, but I do welcome any questions that you might have. I know it is, even though it is very condensed from the 100-page audit report that you get, I know it's still somewhat complicated to follow all these numbers around.
Well, I would just say our staff has done a wonderful job at preparing this, and we've turned a corner from my perspective of where we were going and where we're now heading. Thank you, Jim, very much, and Aaron, and Jocelyn. And the gentleman in the back would like to speak. Please come to the dais.
I just have a question when it comes to the way this.
Name and
budget is.
address, please.
Gene Duffy, 4948 Bay Park Drive. I just have a question on the way the city budget expense. You know, you mentioned 9 months, 75%. Oftentimes, and the ad or prorated and all that kind of stuff. Oftentimes, there's contracts that are either front loaded or back loaded when it comes to expenses. And from my experience with budgeting is fourth quarter has a tendency to be a little bit higher expenses because some agencies try to use unused money and those types of things. Has analysis been done to see if the expenditures in the fourth quarter are traditionally equal to an average of what it would be during the first 3 quarters? And also the combined have been taken into consideration now in the fourth quarter.
In regards to any expenses that you would have incurred, for the storm, I really, I'm not able to address that. But in looking at how your expenditures are incurred, one of the amount that you expend for insurances, is not incurred evenly throughout the year. But you've already have incurred most of those insurance expenses through this point in time. So I wouldn't expect that in the fourth quarter you're going to have any impact from any large insurance bills.
No, if I might, Mr. Satchel, in response to Mr. Duffy's, part of Mr. Duffy's questions, it is incumbent upon this administration to continue to closely monitor the expenditures so that we have a positive result at the end of that fourth quarter. The trend that we've been setting since then is a very close, careful monitoring. The only exception is, as Mr. Satchel began to allude to, is any extraordinary expenditures with reference to Hurricane Hermine and our possible expectations of FEMA assistance. But the fourth quarter is traditionally in some governmental agencies where they unload whatever they have in order to better document a need for the following fiscal year. That will not occur in this community.
Can I
Please.
follow up Mr. Lupo's comment? That was my point when I was asking Mr. Schatzel, our expenses are not seasonal. I understand that there's nothing that would force or any expenditure that would come due in the fourth quarter that's any more unusual outside of insurance than any other quarter. What Mr. Lupo was saying is that traditionally governments spend more in the fourth quarter because everyone doesn't want their budget to be less for next year. But as I explained, we did as close to a line item budget. I forget the name of what we did here. What do you call that, Jocelyn, that we did? Yeah, we started with every line and went over it again, and I can assure you Mr. Lupo is not going to let any departments run up their budget. So the short answer to the query is that may be what happens in governments, but this allocation of figures over 90 days is true and correct, and there are nothing, we expect our expenditures to be, from a legal standpoint, 25% more.
Right, to stay in line. Correct.
Pete, do you see we need to do anything? I know you were a little concerned with the stormwater fund. Do you have any recommendations, anything we should do there?
I don't think it was so much that I had a concern. It is the only fund that's showing a deficit, but it has a relatively smaller scope than some of the other funds. I mean, you can tell you budget $120,000 of revenues in that stormwater fund for the entire year. So a part of what you budgeted was capital outlay expenses of about $27,000. So about half of your deficit did pertain, you had expected to basically make some improvements to your stormwater system. And you have, you have made those improvements, through the end of June, you've expended about almost $26,000, or, excuse me, slightly in excess of $26,000 on improvements. So to answer your question, no, I don't have a concern, and there are, I guess the one thing that could be explored is if you're looking to have a balanced budget in that utility fund. Again, it's not a very large fund, but I think if you look at what cities attempt to do, is you attempt to have a balanced budget in those enterprise type funds, which you're running, for this type of fund, you're running it as a business, so to speak. So you are attempting to match your expenses with the amount that you're taking in. But again, you're not running a large deficit there, so I would not be concerned about, I wouldn't be overly concerned about that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Schatzel, thank you very much. I couldn't be more thrilled. I think Mr. Matthew did a fabulous job, and with the staff, and I expect Mr. Lupo will keep that trend going.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pete. Okay, we have employee health insurance. Who wants to take that one?
Yes.
Was that you?
You gonna pick up the health insurance issue?
Oh.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. Sean Fleming, Senior Benefits Consultant with the Garing Group. So in your agenda packet, I know you have about a 5-page letter that kind of outlines the process for the insurance renewal this year. So I'll give you a couple quick highlights and then happy to answer any questions. The first thing I'll say is we have good news this year, actually 2 years in a row with pretty good news. We did go out to market again, as we do every year. Last year you had right around a 2% increase in the insurance, which compares to market increases of anywhere in the 10 to 12% range on average. So as we went out this year, unfortunately, the renewal from Blue Cross came in at a very high range, about 25% range. However, we do have good news. United Healthcare actually came in with an improved schedule of benefits at a slight reduction in the rates proposed. That also includes, on top of the slight reduction, it includes a better schedule of benefits than the current benefits being offered to the employees. So that schedule of benefits is on page 2 and page 3 of the letter. But essentially the costs are just under current. A couple other notable things on top of the improved schedule of benefits, the United Healthcare program is actually a nationwide network, where the Florida Blue program that we're currently on is an HMO network that is limited only to the state of Florida. The reason I bring that up is you actually have several retirees on the plan that are out of state. With a transition to United Healthcare, we don't need to actually have a separate plan for them anymore. They'll have a nationwide network, so anywhere that a doctor participates in the United Healthcare network, those employees or retirees will have access. That's also beneficial. If somebody for some reason has a catastrophic event, a cancer or something like that, and they want to go to a place like the Mayo Clinic, or they want to go to MD Anderson in Texas, they have that nationwide network now with United Healthcare. So there's a nice improvement there. So overall, that's the medical. And I'll just go through the other lines real quick and then turn it to any questions unless anybody wants to stop me now. The dental insurance, the dental is currently also with Florida Blue. What we're looking at is moving that to MetLife, which employees actually had before we had Florida Blue. So we'd be going back to MetLife and talking with staff, and just from experience, everybody was very happy with the MetLife program when we had it. There's also a couple of enhancements on that plan. One is a higher annual limit goes from 1,500 to 1,750. So that means if somebody has something expensive like a crown or a bridge, the plan will actually cover more than it did in the past. So that's a nice enhancement for the employees. The other big difference with that plan is the out-of-network reimbursement goes to a higher schedule. So if somebody sees a dentist out-of-network, which more and more dentists are going the out-of-network route and just submitting for reimbursement, they'll be reimbursed at a much better level, which means that the employee has less cost share. That plan overall came in at a 6% increase, but that 6% is only $1,600 in comparison to the spend on the medical. It's pretty minor. And then the last thing that we put in front of you for your consideration is a voluntary vision plan. So by voluntary, that means it would be the employee's choice of whether or not they wanted to elect that. They don't have to take that. If they did take that, the employee would pay that out of their paycheck. So the only caveat on that is because it's a new program, they would want to have 10 people enrolled in the program. However, as we sat around our meeting discussing these options, I think 5 or 6 people had a pair of glasses on, so we feel pretty confident that based on the entire employee population, that 10 should be achievable, but we'll make sure the employees know at open enrollment about that requirement. Other than that, overall, I think it's very good news. You all are doing significantly better than a number of other entities around you in multiple layers with this renewal. One, just the overall price increase. Two, just where your rates are in comparison to the market. They're significantly better than a lot of the entities around you. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. The committee worked very diligently with respect to this issue, being well aware of the fact that the employees have not received an increase in salary in some time. Funds have already been set aside and budgeted with respect to this issue. The amount that we're talking about is $5,271 approximately. And it represents approximately 2% cost differential. And yet it is an absolutely night and day comparison to the former policy that the city provided to its employees. The employees themselves, we tested some of the employees with respect to their preferences. This meets many more goals than the employees had in the past, and I certainly would recommend to council that they approve this and we move forward with it. Employees, I'm sure, would be extremely grateful.
Do I have any questions from the council or observations?
This $415.92, is that the yearly savings? It's on page 3.
So
It's not monthly, that's yearly.
So that is the overall savings on the program. So what we do, if you take a look on the left where you're looking at that number, you see the 47, the 2, the 1, the 0. That's the number of people enrolled in each tier. So switching to the one plan, if those employees enrolled in the same program, yes, that 415 is the savings. However, there's a slight increase because the single rate goes up a little bit. So that's the, right around the slightly under 2% that the city manager referenced. So that's based on the actual budget effect because the city pays 100% of the single coverage.
So,
I have a quick question. The retirees, what are the age of the retirees? Are they Medicare age?
No, so these retirees are pre-65 retirees, so they're not yet Medicare eligible, so this plan is primary. If they were to stay on this plan after 65, Medicare would be primary. However, most of them won't because of the premium cost. It makes more sense to buy like a Medicare supplement.
any other comment? We need a motion to approve if you so desire.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor and Council, on behalf of the employees, I certainly would like to thank you for your consideration on their behalf. I'm sure they would receive this news with quite a bit of joy. Thank you, Council.
Well, we had to give them something this year, and I hope that it's good enough. Okay, we're going to boards and committees. We have some vacancies, gentlemen and ladies. Do we just need to fill planning and zoning, Jocelyn? Or all of it? You don't want us to fill all of it?
No, sir, we just need a position. Currently, Mr. Larry Daly resigned.
Right.
I'll need a nomination and then a vote on a new member for that position.
Okay. Well, do you want a new member, or you want to raise alternates?
I would still need a new member, sir.
You want to, if we take an alternate, put it.
I'm going to move an alternate up, but I'll still need a new person.
So you need a new alternate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone have anyone in
I
mind?
think we need
Actually,
to ask around.
I think it'd be a good idea. See who's interested.
We'll put it on the next agenda for you.
Okay, that'll
Yeah.
work.
It's hard to put somebody's name if you haven't chatted with them.
This is just here to tell you.
And
It's not here to pick.
Oh, I thought they wanted to.
Look, yeah.
I don't. Does anyone have anyone in mind? Do you have anyone in mind that you would like to nominate?
Not at this time.
Okay, then we're gonna go ahead and table this?
Yes.
Okay. We need a motion, Councilman? All right.
You need a motion to table? No, just take no action on it.
Okay.
It's another-
Thank you, Council.
All right. Mrs. Sora,
Old business.
your turn.
We still haven't heard from planning and zoning on the feather flags.
Good.
They did have a meeting. We internally discussed waiting till the new building official started to get his perspective on the feather flag issue. Then, once we have a better understanding of his perspective, since he would be the one to help us make some decisions about the ordinance, we'll put it back on the council agenda for your consideration.
Super.
As additional information, ma'am, feather flags are an issue in many different communities. They are outlawed in many communities for very specific reasons. We are in a process, or will be very shortly, of addressing signage and lighting and other issues on our waterfront. So that'll be part and parcel, but we're still waiting for some quick decisions. And I can indicate to you that the initial response with respects to feather flags are not positive.
All
Are
right.
we aligning with this Harbors Initiative on 19, or have we discussed that at all with Unify US 19, the county thing?
I know Mr. Lupo mentioned that. I haven't heard anything from the county about that as of late.
Johnson, I would like you to maybe touch base with someone. They had a meeting last week
Okay.
about, I mean, this is a general thing. They were having a meeting about the storm and possibly Suncoast, and we weren't ever notified, and I've noticed over the weeks and months that we're not getting notified of a lot of things.
I did
Mr. Mayor,
contact-
if I might, we did address that issue, and we have notified the county of perhaps their oversight, and we've been assured that that will not occur in the future. It was rather embarrassing for you and for me to be quizzed by a county commissioner about our attendance at a meeting when we had absolutely no notification. But we've resolved that issue, and we feel rather confident that that won't occur again.
Okay. Well, the last meeting we were here, the Port Port Authority brought up having a committee for ordinance, and our vice mayor has talked about it at one time. Is there anything that we have to do to get something like that rolling?
That is a good question. Mr. Matthew, will you take that since it is,
It's up to council.
well,
It's not a legal question. Council to do, set up committees, they can set up committees.
well, as opposed to that, they're talking about rewriting some of the ordinances that are obsolete on the waterfront. How would you, as the attorney, like to receive those suggestions, or would you like to write them and?
Well, go ahead, no, go ahead,
If-
please.
if I might make a
Mr.
s-
Lupe and I have chatted about it.
Yes, if I might, Mayor. Mr. Matthew and I have sat and discussed a whole list of issues that were presented to us, and we are trying to go down them one by one so that we can make some adjustments and changes and bring them back to council for council's consideration. Some of them are rather mundane, they're almost clerical in nature, but some of them are rather important. In fact, we discussed today with respect to our future dog park that will be in this community very shortly. And we are visiting that law with respect to animals in our parks, et cetera. But that's just an example of what's happening. Very shortly, we'll have an additional feature for this community at minimal expense, easily budgeted within the budget for a dog walking section in our park.
Now, for the general public that might be watching, that was a citizen that brought that to me, and Mr. Lupo and I took a ride, and I think we're gonna have a significant upgrade in the waterfront park.
So are we going
Right
to look
now-
into having a review committee?
We can do that if, once at least the attorney and I have sat down and come up with a list, we can put a committee together and see what direction they're coming from, most assuredly.
Okay.
Keep that on your, Ms. Sorrell,
Yes?
you're gonna keep that on your
Yes.
ongoing list?
It's a running list, okay?
I know, I
right.
depend on you.
And Mr. Lee has brought up the Berlin Drive thing. Have we talked to him?
Well, Mr. Lee keeps giving me a number that says out of order, so I haven't. Have you got that number?
No, I do not.
I talked to Mr. Lee on Saturday. I ran into him in Walmart. And I guess there's been some I don't know, he said his number hasn't changed, but I'll make sure you get the numbers so you can reach him.
Okay.
He does have a concern there, and I think it is a concern. And that is raw sewage coming into the street. I agree, it's unacceptable. I don't know why that particular area has that problem, but I think it's something we definitely have to fix. We can look into that and see if, I know they did what they could at the time with the cap and so on and so forth, but when we get these torrential rains, it seems to be a problem and a recurring problem. So it's really not something I think we want to see happen in the city.
Pat, do you have any thoughts about why that occurred or why it does occur?
I'm sure it's a combination. As you know, we don't treat our own sewage. It gets sent to Newport Richey or to Pasco County. Now, one of the issues is when we flood, typically they flood also. So you can only fit so much liquid in a pipe. Hence the problem with it backing up. Mr. Lee happens to live near the shallowest manhole at the end of that system. That's one of the reasons it comes out there. And we're pretty aware of that. Some of the steps we're taking to correct it is getting the lift stations put on SCADA, where we can actually sit there and control which lift station pumps to which lift station at what time. And we'll know how full they are. It shows how full they are. I can say, okay, this station isn't full. It doesn't need the pump, and I can shut it off. which it relieves a lot of pressure off the next station it pumps into. So as soon as we get upgraded to SCADA, that will help that situation immensely. It's a process.
But there's not really a lift station at that.
Oh, yeah, Bay Boulevard, it's the main lift station. That's where everything leaves and heads to Newport Richie. So all the other stations pump into that station. That's why that one backs up. If I can shut some of the outer ones down that don't need to run, then I can relieve some of the pressure on Bay Boulevard.
The SCADA system is a balancing mechanism, and if the volume isn't needed in a smaller one, we can reduce the volume, which would allow us additional capacity in the main pump, in the main lifting station. That's essentially what that system is.
Terry, doesn't Mr. Lee live on Berlin or?
He's on Berlin.
Berlin.
So he's well off of the Bay Boulevard.
Right, but
lift.
it is the end manhole for that
Okay.
particular lift station, and that's why it shows up there first,
Does the amount of rainwater affect that?
completely.
So if you have.
And there's a
rainwater-
number of reasons for that. It's not just a simple fix. Some people, when it rains heavy, go out and take their clean out caps off, so that their yard will drain. That's rainwater into our system. I'm sure there are cracks in pipes somewhere out in the system. They absorb the rainwater. So there's a number of reasons. We've put dishes in every one of the manholes out there. We're confident it's not going in through the manhole.
What's a dish?
It's basically that. It's a aluminum dish that fits under the manhole, that when it rains, if that manhole leaks, that dish catches the water. It doesn't go down into our system. So we've done a number of things to stop it. Controlling is the main fix. If we can control our stations, we can control the flow.
But also, if I might, in addition to simply controlling and adding the features to control it, is the proper maintenance of those lines to ensure that there's not infiltration. And that's part of our problem. That infiltration costs us additional time, money, and effort. And it's it will be part of this community's overall goal at upgrading and improving its infrastructure, including the entire stormwater drainage system, our drainage canal system, our lift stations, and about 3 or 4 other things. They are on our plate in the very, very near future.
And while I have the principals here, we talked about Mr. Brown's drain that goes under Candlelight. And you told me that the residents are
Yeah, there is an
piling-
issue that hurts us out there. They tend to stack brush right across the street from your house, right on top of the drain that your pipe drains into.
I shoveled 4 wheelbarrows of mud.
I saw that today. Yeah, I saw that today.
Is there a way you can ask your neighbors not to?
If they keep it in the middle, it'd be fine, but someone piled it to the left, right on the drain.
Yeah, or if there's wind, it goes right into the drain.
Is there a reason that it needs to be in that area at all? Is if that's not that many drains there?
Nobody wants it in their yard.
Put a
That-
fence around the drain. That's all. Put a fence around it and then we'll.
Would that be okay with you, Ms. Brown?
I wouldn't mind trucking it up to the corner of Walnut and Orange Grove.
That'll work.
Yeah, we were out there earlier this afternoon looking at exactly that issue. But we can use Walnut and Orange Grove, sure.
You're gonna truck it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should I take your temperature?
We'll take it when you truck it, sir.
I don't think that sounds like a.
No, we'll take a better look and see what we can do.
I'm gonna save you, Tom, from that one. Any other thoughts?
Oh, how we coming on Orange Grove's paving? Are we moving ahead on that, or is?
We met and we are continuing to meet with respect to Orange Grove and the issues at Orange Grove and Walnut. We resolved some of the issues with respect to our meetings with the county the potential for Walnut. We still have some discussion with Orange Grove. Do you have anything to add, Jocelyn? So we're still at a slight impasse with Orange Grove as far as the county's jurisdiction versus ours, and the county being very willing to give us Orange Grove for our complete
What about the
support.
Walnut Street issues?
Walnut Street is a county road. There are very few county residents living on one side of the road, and we have residents living on, if you're facing this direction to the right. The county, after many complaints, continued a swale or a drainage ditch down the right side where majority are our residents.
Yeah, in the back there.
Right. So that swale, when they put it in, they also tried to peak it so that some of the flow would go one way, some of the flow would go the other way. But at the same time, they notified all of the residents along that area that they could no longer use their man-made gates and pull their trailers or boats or whatever, because in doing so it would tear up the new swales, etc. And in fact, if they intended to move forward with something like that and continue to destroy the swales, the county would install a small wall to make it absolutely impossible to utilize that little section. Now, they've come up with a resolution to the issue in that if you are of a mind to have an exit, an egress from your property onto Walnut, you will join with some of your other neighbors, and you will be assessed for the construction of a culvert and a cap over that culvert, so that you can egress your equipment, your vehicles, your trailers, whatever you have, onto Walnut. And that can be somewhere between, depending upon the number, $10,000 to $12,000, and it'll be done through an assessment process. We will take the burden of soliciting which neighbors are interested and under the specific guidelines. And if they are, we will present that to the county, and then the county will then go out and they will do all of that work through the assessment process. But it's a voluntary issue for each individual.
So if I can sum this up, we're going forward with Orange Grove at some point.
At some point in time, if council is of a mind to take Orange Grove on as our street, along with all the burden with respect to that, the council makes that decision, we'll move in that direction. At this stage, it is still a county road that is supposed to be maintained by the county, and that's the issue.
Did we not get a communication from Mike Wells, that they were willing for us to, it's our residents that are stuck behind Orange Grove, and I wouldn't drive my car over it every day. So, we had some discussion about that. Let me just, for update, excuse me, I have hiccups. The county has now sodded over the swale on the east side of Walnut. So there's no drainage, excuse me.
There's no drainage.
Well, I mean, they put sod in the swale. I don't understand that, but that's what I was told.
The issue, Mayor, is that that may have been done initially or at this stage of the game, but they may be thinking about changing and altering that whole swale concept, because if some of the residents decide to join in, there'll be some changes along that section. The county is anxious to give us Orange Grove. I mean, to be very willing to give it to us, because we pick up the entire burden. resurfacing, drainage, right down the line. So the county would like us to accept it. Our problem is to address or to help the county address the problem that our citizens face in Orange Grove legitimately. What we would like to try and broker is some kind of interlocal agreement where maybe we could share in the resurfacing of Orange Grove rather than pick up the entire burden ourselves. Or in the alternative, if council is of a mind, we would have to come up with the funds to complete the necessary repairs once the county gives us the road. I'm sure that in fact, we have an engineer right now attempting to give us some estimates as to what it would take to do that. I didn't feel like coming before council blindly until I had those numbers, so you can have a more accurate feeling for what it would cost to do that kind of work. Depending upon those amounts, we can move forward either with an interlocal agreement to have that road brought back or given to the city within certain parameters, or perhaps we can work out some kind of arrangement where they can come up with part of the work, we can come up with part of the funds, whatever. But that's something we can bring back to council at a future date.
I know we did have an interlocal agreement with them. Some years back, and we were proceeding on it, as I recall. We even had the engineering started, from what I understand. And then there was a regime change at the top of the county, and that was scrapped.
They didn't have Sorrell's old business.
Yeah, well, what can I say?
Mr. Gallagher had agreed he was going to do this with us, and then there was a change of heart. It did go before the commissioners and was voted down, from what I understand, because they didn't understand or they were not informed that there was an interlocal agreement between us and Mr. Gallagher that was going to take care of this. And the last I heard was that because of the lack of the people that would be on their street, it would never pay to do any type of assessment, so they have no intention, and they stress that definitely, had no intention of ever paving that road. So
Paving Orange Grove.
Orange Grove. So, yeah, I'm anxious to see what the engineer comes up with as far as a price, and maybe we can go back to the county and bring home the point that we did have an agreement with them at one time, and maybe they could stand up to that agreement.
Is there any remnants of that agreement?
We can certainly look, our records, we'll search, and then if failing here, we'll search the county records.
Well,
And then we'll go from there.
My feeling is that road has to be paved. And my legal question, I guess, would be, can we use our transportation fees if it is the county's road?
No.
I think I know the answer. I don't want to know.
Yeah, just to help you a little bit, because I kind of did this before Mr. Lupo got here. The short answer to your question is yes, Mr. Mayor. It's a valid municipal purpose, so you can use our transportation
Even if it's
impact
their
fees.
road,
It's not a problem, but I had already started engaging, got a task order from the engineer for the purpose of determining what needs to be done to Orange Grove, with a specific proviso that he let, what's holding it up is I want to know from the engineer, because I looked at eyeball, I just don't want something to scrape it or fix it, because there are some problems there, but I want to know what the potential liability for the city is with regard to the flooding that's over there. Okay, so that's why it's taken a little bit of time. I can tell you, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jocelyn, but if my memory serves me correct, we wanted some information a couple of months ago from the county regarding that road, and within about 8 seconds, they were back to us, when do you want to take over the road? Okay, did I get that right?
Yes.
It's possible, Councilman Rowe, but I suspect that things could change politically over there, but from my conversations, because I met with the county administrator as well as Mr. Wells last week and city staff here, and the county graciously, because they have no legal duty to do anything on Walnut Street, has changed their opinion, okay, mostly through the political pressure and things that have been done here, and they are willing to allow, at the expense of the property owners, those that want access to Walnut Street. Now, that's against their rules, because it gives access on 2 streets to one place. We don't even allow that here. They're willing to do that. They'll go through the trouble of an interlocal for that. They have to pay their portion of the assessment, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. They're also gonna have to pay for an apron to come out and go over the swale and put the appropriate pipe underneath to run the water through, and that'll be governed by them. But that offer's out there, so we, the city's done everything we can. You understand what I mean? It was a success. I'd like to publicly thank Commissioner Wells for that. So that's where that stands. I don't think, we just found this out a couple of days ago, that's why.
Mr. Matthew, you said that we have a rule that you can't enter 2 roads.
Yeah, but generally, that's the rule everywhere. I don't think we,
But if
in
you
the
have a
city here.
corner lot,
That's different in a corner lot. I'm saying you can't have a driveway out in the front of your house and the back of your house. Okay, unless it's an alley. Okay, and they have that rule too. And so they're breaking their rule.
30 years later, we're.
Yeah, well, I understand that, but I guess my point is that that's their rule, but, you know, they don't have to do it legally. I opened up the meeting with, I can't force you to do it. And, they said, Mr. Matthew, we can appreciate the equities, and they said that Jocelyn sweet talked them. I was there.
I'll have the names of the people who want to participate for you soon.
Fine.
I don't know where we go from there.
Once we have those names, we'll move forward.
And one other thing, Jim, we had talked about in the industrial section, the paving of James Clark, maybe, is that the correct?
I can't remember where that is. Clark Moody.
Clark Moody, that's it.
That was after my time. But has anything been done with that? I guess that's what he asked.
Did we not go forward with?
I think we're waiting on the engineer to give us a price quote on that as well.
Thank you. Okay. Any other thoughts? Everybody want to stay a little longer?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a problem with my eye.